Welcome to Talking Tech with Legal IT Insider. I'm your host, Caroline Hill. And in this webinar with NetDocuments today, we're going to be exploring NetDocuments' new AI-powered capabilities, including AI profiling and its new agentic AI editing tool in Word, and looking at what this means for lawyers in terms of efficiency. I'm joined today by Jennifer Poon, who currently serves as Legal AI Solutions Director at NetDocuments. Jen, as you've heard me say before, Jen and I have talked a few times on webinars. It's great to see you, Jen. Jen has nearly a decade of legal experience and was previously litigation counsel at Aiken Gump, and before that was a corporate associate at Simpson Thacher. Hi, Jen.
Hi, great to see you again, Caroline, and thanks for having me again.
I actually really love our chats, so today, though, we're obviously talking about something different. We've had a whole series of webinars talking about different functionality. So as I said, so today we're going to be talking through AI profiling. We're going to be talking about metadata before we get onto NetDocuments AI profiling tool, and then we're going to be talking about AI profiling before moving on to talk about the new AI markup engine with which you can start applying global edits at scale. And as I mentioned, we'll be looking at how these start to come together. We're also, if we've got time, which I hope we will, going to come on to talk a little bit about MCP, which everybody's talking about. Just we're going to touch on it, and maybe a little bit about platformization in terms of the battle to be the platform. But to be honest, I'm not sure we'll get time for that. But if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. This is interactive. Jen is always absolutely brilliant at answering questions as we go. We'll have a couple of demos, and we've got a lot to fit in. So Jen, before we go on to the tool, so let's talk metadata. So obviously, the underlying success of AI projects relies on good data and metadata. Do you think people forget that to a certain extent? Do you think that there's a sort of sense that Gen AI just is this cure, we're just going to sort stuff out and we're going to be able to find stuff without working on the data?
Yeah, so people are like, why are we still talking about metadata? Specifically within the context of document management systems, it's like, why do we need that if we can just have AI search? Then you don't really need all these like document tags anymore. But it actually is pretty foundational in order for AI to work properly. So the first advantage is that it optimizes your search because all that information is already extracted, so it makes the search faster and more accurate. Especially if you have like people spot checking it to make sure it's accurate. But it can also be used as the basis to do a lot of other cool things, for lack of a better word. So for example, when you have all those profile attributes filled out, you can use that to trigger a workflow. For example, if you have metadata, which you can customize nowadays, for like a lease agreement and the termination or renewal terms are a certain, length of time, or the lease is over a certain threshold amount, then it triggers a review process and says, hey, like a human attorney now needs to look at this and make sure that it's in line with our standards. Or, it can trigger the application of a playbook automatically as soon as you drop it into the DMS. So that's one useful application for the metadata. The second one is market or case intelligence. So especially the way that we think about it in NetDocs, if you kind of configure it so that your everyday DMS sort of looks like a Excel spreadsheet with, rather than saying the author, created by, modified by, what if it could tell you the key terms? So for example, for the lease, the renewal term, the parties, the tenant, the landlord, or whatever, for an LPA, the fund name, the execution date, all that stuff. Preferred rate of return. Firms often have to use third-party platforms to sort of pull all this information together in order to determine what's market. So when they're negotiating, often it is, the other side saying, hey, this is what we consider market. And then, you go, well, no, this is what I consider market, but it's hard to have firm data to like back that up. Freudian slip, firm data. I meant like concrete data to back that up. But if you use AI to extract that metadata accurately, then you can actually say, well, no, I've just done a search, and out of like the last 5 times, we've agreed on this, and the counterparty has accepted. So we really do think it's market. So being able to pull that information quickly will allow you to negotiate better. Same thing for a case in the litigation context. If you have that metadata, filled out for a case, like who the judge was, whether it was successful or not, the length of time, if it was a settlement agreement, like how much you agreed to, having that sort of intelligence and data at your fingertips is also very useful. So for those reasons, search optimization, what else did I say? Oh, triggering further processes, and then finally the intelligence aspect of it. By fully hydrating your metadata set, we believe that that's really key towards doing semantic search properly. And not only that, making your DMS agent ready. So when you want to, and we'll talk about the MCP and everything, it's like the buzzword, but when you have that all in front of you, it makes it easy for other vendors that you choose to use, like AI vendors, to plug into your system, find the right precedents, and then, form whatever workflow you want it to do.
Yeah, no, amazing. Yeah, and actually, because we've been talking about how, again, and we'll come on to this, but MCP is not a magic pill, actually it's only going to be as good as what you've already got within your current system. So before we talk about your AI profiling tool and you give us a demo, so tell me about, this has been, taxonomy is something that firms have been struggling with for a long time, actually, haven't they? Like, although now with the better AI functionality, we can take out a big chunk of the pain. But the first step is to come up with the taxonomy. And I wondered if because you see a lot of this behind the scenes, if you could share, are there sort of prevailing wisdom or best practice that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, I had a customer come up to me after a briefing, and they were like, "That was great, but you used a lot of acronyms that I don't understand." So, I'm going to start by saying, what is a taxonomy? For those of you that aren't as familiar with it or what it is, so when you have metadata in your system, including the document type, you have to sort of decide on what those document types are going to be. So pretty standard, for example, in a firm, if they have both a transactional and litigation practice, to have, the first category be, is this transactional or litigation? And then you have subcategories, right? Is this usually by practice areas, or, sometimes not, sometimes just by document type, but it can get pretty granular, and there's usually subcategories. So that taxonomy is like the first step towards auto profiling using AI, because you have to decide what your document types are. And the trick is that every firm is different. Like if you're a very niche practice, your document types that you care about are going to be vastly different than what a different firm cares about. And now there is something out there called Sally that attempts to provide a standardized taxonomy that everybody can coalesce around, to make stuff and interoperability easier, obviously. But Sally is extremely complicated. I'm not going to make up numbers about how many subcategories and categories there are, but suffice it to say that the level of granularity, some people find it unwieldy and unnecessary. So in the current auto profiling projects that we've been tackling with our customers, because it's actually something that we can do today, there is initial investment of time that is required to figure out what the right taxonomy is. And you can base some of it and pull some of it or a lot of it from Sally, but then you have to customize it. So at NetDocs, we have a team that's dedicated to figuring out like the NetDocs taxonomy, like our recommended best one. But between Sally and the NetDocs one or whatever one you choose to use, you still have to take a look at it and make sure that it aligns and is like usable for your lawyers and for your firm. There's also a third option. A lot of customers are like, I don't really want to do the thinking for it. Can't we give it like a test sample of certain documents and then just ask AI to figure it out? Yes, you can. But again, after you do that initial one, you still have to like cut it down, and then like you have to test it obviously to make sure that that framework fits. So it's like it's an art, I'd say, rather than a science. What were we talking about again? Taxonomies. Yes.
Taxonomy.
So that's the taxonomy.
Can I
Sorry,
just
I
ask
feel
you real quick? because I know we're not
Mind-blowing.
here. I know we're not here to talk about taxonomy, but just real quick, because you touched on standardization, interoperability, and this. I know that we could speak for a whole session about Sally, and we're not going to. We're going to come on to your AI talk. But like, what is it? What would you say for people that are not necessarily for the people that are asking you what taxonomy is? What's the benefit of having interoperability and standardization? I mean, there is clearly a benefit.
Yeah. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so I'm gonna say, when AI first came out, everybody was like, well, I want one tool to do everything, right? But increasingly in 2 years, I feel like the answer is that there is no one ring to rule them all. So, one AI tool that's going to do everything you need to do, like you have your normal tech stack as a legal organization, and then you're going to also have your AI tech stack, I think, composed of still different vendors or different platforms providing you different services. So, even now, you can sort of see the differentiation. E-discovery has still remained e-discovery. Now with AI, document management systems are document management system, AI stuff. And then you have your Harvey and your Lagoras and all these other ones that are doing workflow automation. The benefit to having for everybody to use a standardized taxonomy or, to go through an MCP layer is that it allows for interoperability. Like whatever you choose, it's easy to sort of plug and play
Yeah.
without too much friction, which
Yeah.
everybody hates.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And then firms are obviously investing in people, but again, yeah, it's that sort of, oh, I think I can just do this with AI, and I like you said, I guess to a certain extent they can, but firms seem to be investing quite heavily or thinking about this a lot right now in terms of also bringing in people and understanding that this is critical. So I guess I contradict
Yeah.
myself. But,
No,
some
no,
people
no.
are really getting it and some people are not.
That actually brings to mind something you said. Why interoperability? It's also because everybody's recognizing that this is changing so rapidly. Like there's new breakthroughs every day. The models keep on getting better and better. So like the keyword is optionality. Everybody wants to maintain their optionality right now and not get locked into one thing so that when something different comes along, it's not like a huge lift and you don't have to start over from scratch in order to utilize like the next and best of breed technology.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So once you've decided, you've gone through the lovely pain-free process of deciding on your taxonomy. So talk me through, that's when you come onto AI profiling. So it lets you classify, extract metadata. Talk me through how it works. And if you want to, I think you're going to show me a demo or video, or we're going to show us a little bit in action how it works. And if anybody's got questions, by all means, please put them in the chat as we go.
Yeah, let me just log into my stuff and get myself demo ready. So first principles, again, just like a basic kind of what are we talking about? Whenever you save a document to a document management system, you have an annoying pop-up. Some of it's mandatory where you have to classify it, the document type. And for a lot of lawyers, they just put whatever, like miscellaneous or like
ADHD.
legal document or something like super, just like a catch-all category because they don't have the time to fill that out. Um, and so you don't really know what's in your DMS. Like it makes search harder, it makes finding the right precedents harder because nobody's bothered to fill that information out. So the breakthrough that came with AI is that you can use AI now because it's very good at retrieval augmented generation, RAG, so that it's really easy to extract those data points automatically and fill out those metadata profile fields, which is super exciting and something that CAM people are probably or have always been really excited about. And at Docs, we've even moved a step beyond that. Like we think about if you have a bunch of documents sitting on a shared drive or a SharePoint somewhere and you have no idea what they are because they're like not uh, named according to a convention. The title is something like document number 342 or something like that. No metadata fields other than like who authored it, when it was created, all that stuff. Well, once you migrate it into our system and then you press a magic button, all of a sudden you can not only rename those files according to what's contained in the document, but also extract all those key points of data from the document. So I'm just checking to make sure I've logged in.
Don't worry. No.
NetDocs is a security compliance company first. I always say that. So it logs me out doing an activity, and then I run my demos and everybody's
These
staring, and then I'm getting an error message, and it's like,
These
a
are live
nightmare
demos,
statue.
and people appreciate. You know what? Like some people sort of show a video. That's absolutely fine as well. Like I've done plenty of webinars where people do videos and talk over the video, and that is absolutely fine too. But the thing we understand about the live demos is that sometimes they take a bit of time to get going. So, and here we are.
And then you're tap dancing and hoping nobody notices. But no, this one won't because I've done it several times now. But here's my workspace, right? So I click into my Matter. I'm like, what have the lawyers done? Oh, here we go. So probably a lot of people are like, no, it's not that bad on the system we use. People actually put some effort into naming them in a sane fashion, but just imagine this is your worst case scenario. So obviously there were metadata fields that people wanted to be filled out here. The date of the agreement, the expiration date, governing law, blah, 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 blah. But these might be like different types of agreements too, right? You might have some NDAs in there. You might have some other like vendor contracts. You might have leases, for example. So what we can do nowadays is that you can have a background process. So something that runs on on a regular schedule, say like every hour or every day or every week, depending on how regular you want it to go. And you can also customize it so that it only does this for documents that don't have this filled out yet. I'm going to manually trigger it. So I've pressed the magic button on the back end, and then we'll give it 20 seconds, but you should oh, it's already started. You can see now that it's starting to profile it. So the AI has extracted all these key data points, and not only that, as you can see, it has renamed the documents. Ooh, and sorry, I'm not a professional demoer, obviously. Look, some of them are not done. Let's wait.
That's pretty quick, very quick.
Yeah, I told you this is going to be a 2-minute demo, and then we're going to have to talk the rest of the time. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's great.
Sometimes when we demoed this recently at ILTACon, this big legal tech conference in August, and there were like gasps in the room because this is really cool. So
really cool.
this is all customizable, right? Like the naming convention, we put like the type of agreement. So this is an NDA, this is a licensing agreement. Looks like there's only those two types here. And then like the name of the client, effective date, expiration date, governing law, renewal terms. And you can see that it differentiates. So if it's an NDA, then it doesn't have a payment term. So that just says not applicable. So this is what I meant. Now that you have this metadata filled out, say if the renewal term is over a year, you can key it so that it says needs review. Please look at this if you're doing due diligence. This is something we need to flag to the client and perhaps to renegotiate. Same thing with payment terms if they're over a certain amount. So you can trigger workflows. Or say you're just in your everyday, I don't know how real these documents are, but say that you see something evergreen. What does that mean? You can then on our system start querying the document more and be like, tell me more about the evergreen provision. So here
you could trigger a review potentially, like based on term or anything. Just trigger sort of a review where you
what's it called? Evergreen notice provision. The evergreen renewal term in this doc. And then for those of you who haven't seen our assistant before, this is our assistant. It is has a zero data retention policy, and it's right on your DMS. So you don't have to like scrub data and like you would if you had to drop it into ChatGPT. It automatically none of this data is retained. So here you go. I've got my answer now. The evergreen renewal term is described as section 4.2. It states evergreen with notice means the agreement will automatically renew unless one party provides blah, 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 blah. So that's a diligence use case, right? I'm going to go ahead and close this. But in terms of the other examples I said, like if someone argues, hey, no, when we've done this, it's we always argue for 2 years. And I can be like, well, no, in the past, whatever agreements I've done since 2025, I have like 1, 2, whatever. I've had 90% of this are like not 2 years or whatever. And so you can sort of surface that information quickly and like filter for it here until like you're satisfied.
Do you did you do this across? So tell me about the document sets how it works in terms of the type of document sets, and then are you creating what, forgive my not knowing this, but like, so you're creating one taxonomy and then you're profiling all of your documents, or are you going, actually that's not really relevant, but how does it work, and what document sets are you doing across the whole of the DMS, or how do you manage it?
A great question. So with our customers right now, trying to decide this all at once is just kind of a mind-boggling project. So we use the crawl, walk, run model, which means we start small. So we look at like a very high value use case. For example, a lot of people have just docketing folders where they throw in a bunch of filings from a certain case. They have no idea that it's not like appropriately named or dated. So we start with that sort of like one workspace, and we'll use auto profiling to test against it, rename everything, extract all the key data out, check that it's working accurately, and that we like it. And then we move on to like the matter itself, deciding like whatever subcategories are there. And then you can move on for that. Like then you start with like then you go to the next practice, or you go to the entire practice, then another practice. So you sort of do it slowly and incrementally over time. And you might not need it for all of your practices, right? This is just for the ones where you're like, well, the metadata auto profiling would be very beneficial and useful.
Yeah, I can't see a practice where it wouldn't be, but I can see where maybe that maybe it's obviously different, there's going to be different relevant metadata for different practice areas, like it's not going to be necessarily, I don't know how that's handled, but it's not necessarily going to be uniform, but
might not be urgent, but like say you have something, you might just have like notes from client meetings, right? That you then turn into memos. Well, those notes, like how much metadata, if they're going to be, turned into like consolidated memos anyways, are you going to need? So like for that, you just you categorize it in notes, and then you don't have that metadata associated with it because you don't need it. But maybe it's not right to say that you don't do it for all of it, but like the urgency of that use case is probably you start with your high value ones first and then move towards those at the back end.
Do you have to, does privacy and confidentiality butt in here in the work that you're doing? Do you have to be concerned, or is it just a case of, well, this is just the publicly available information and we don't even have to think about privacy and confidentiality when you're doing this exercise?
Well, I think for those clients or for matters that clients don't want AI applied to, then you just wouldn't do it. I think those permissions still are in place. But otherwise, we have a zero data retention policy. So all the stuff that we send to OpenAI, because we use GPT, is immediately scrubbed. And so, it's like using any other AI tool. If they're good with AI tools, then they're good with this use case. Yeah. It's the same sort of security and permissions that are applied.
Okay. And then in terms of I was going to ask about accuracy, and so I appreciate accuracy compared to, so I heard a funny example, in fact more than once, in terms of how they would classify it. So there are firms that don't do aviation. I think you and I might have touched on this before, but like where the fee earners have the top type of work, the practice area they've clicked on aviation. So a firm that didn't do any aviation had a whole bunch of aviation documents. So compared to that, anything is better. But in terms of sort of accuracy and are you asked to measure that? Are you able to measure it?
Sorry, it's sweater weather, and I've developed like consumption, like an old Victorian name, so I'm trying not to cough on everyone's.
I'm thinking Barocca, don't worry.
Yeah. So I think I would answer that sort of like with the same security answer that I just gave, in that it's just as accurate as like you basic reg, like retrieval augmented, sorry, not using that correctly. As you see basic extractions done nowadays, it's pretty good. Like we've had several instances in which using AI and comparing it against a human reviewer, it's actually more accurate and more nuanced. It just has endless time and doesn't actually cause it pain to extract this information. But like I said, using the crawl, walk, run model, you're testing it, right? So the first time you do a limited data set, you get a human reviewer to go in, maybe someone from your KM team, and check like every fifth document to make sure that the metadata extraction is accurate. But, these are metadata profile fields, right? So if you find something that's off, you could easily go in and just override it manually and type that in. And then if it's a known bug in the system, you can always tweak it on the back end, because what's driving that extraction are individual prompts on the back end. So you could always go in and like fix the prompt to make it more accurate.
Yeah. If you've got questions, please do post them in the chat. What we sometimes find is that towards the end, when we run out of time, people post a bunch of questions. Like, we're not going to wait, because if you have questions, please do post them now. Sometimes I've not had a chance to get to them, and I do apologize for those times.
Yeah.
But please do.
It's also, sorry. It's also like,
No.
I know that we're throwing around a lot of terms here, and for me, I feel like everyone's tired of hearing me talk about them, so I just assume that people know. But like, I did a demo where I was like, how many people consider themselves early on in their AI journey and haven't even seen or play around with ChatGPT yet? And like half the hands went out in the room. This was a room full of lawyers, so I should have guessed. So
Right.
no question is too basic, or if you don't understand something, like please do ask. More than happy to answer. I personally get super annoyed when I join something and someone's using a bunch of acronyms that I don't understand. It's really off-putting. So please let me know.
Yeah. I gave a talk the other day to a bunch of people, and no one told me that they were going to be partners rather than techies. I'm not a techie, as you know, I'm an ex-lawyer, but I had pitched my talk kind of that, all thinking that they were going to be techies, and then I was just like, I'm going to have to change this. Not that I'm, saying that I'm amazing at tech, but no, you'd hope that
was me. That was me. There's a room full of lawyers, and they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. What is semantic search? What is taxonomy? What is metadata? We've never even touched that. And I'm like, all right. Track here. Yeah.
We've actually got in the Q&A. Oh, the chat is not working apparently. So if we could, our end, just enable that. I think it is working because we had a bunch of people post to say where they're listening in from. But if you, by all means, we've got somebody in the chat monitoring Q&A. So if you are struggling with chat for whatever reason, please do post in the Q&A, and we will be making sure that we actually monitor that. We're going to talk about cool. So we've got, do you think, it's an interesting sort of tangential, do you think this AI information should be integrated into university legal courses? I do.
You and I love tangents.
We are a tangent.
Half the fun of this is the tangents. Yes, I do. I feel like it's like the second coming of the internet, and there's so much, not misinformation about there, but maybe misunderstanding, especially when it's such a nascent technology. And even just understanding that, for example, I think with ChatGPT, even if you have the enterprise version, it still retains it for 30 days. And there was a recent case that the New York Times sued OpenAI and believe that it wants it to maintain that data forever. So I have some firms that are like, well, why do we need your assistant? We use enterprise ChatGPT, like it's safe. And I'm like, well, actually, no, they have a 30-day retention policy after you delete something. So if it's retained, that means that if its algorithm picks up or flags something, for example, one time I was working on or doing research into the MindGeek case, the Pornhub for owns Pornhub. Anyways, it was looking at suing. People were looking at suing the credit card companies that facilitate payments to these sites because there are obviously some underage users on there. So on the firm platform, I was typing in like child pornography, and then I thought about it and I was like, oh no, and I had to email IT and be like, by the way, I'm not looking up child pornography at work. This is clearly for a research assignment. But like stuff like that, some of the stuff that lawyers research and do can flag abuse monitoring, right? So again, if your data is being retained, first of all, I think that it's probably the models are training on it, and second of all, then it's subject to these algorithmic flagging for like CSAM and other stuff. And then a human reviewer can then review it. For the legal industry, this is a giant problem. Obviously, because it's sensitive client data. So you wouldn't want OpenAI to retain it. So even kind of understanding what different these kind of considerations in mind, I think, is going to be something that people are going to have to pay attention to going forward. And I don't know, I listened to the NYT Daily, and there was just something about how like you use ChatGPT now can get you into this like spiral, a lot of mental health problems. Like I
Oh,
think
yeah.
those are things that we're going to have to think about as we move forward with technology. Just like in earlier days, like when
Yeah.
people had to learn that the internet didn't always tell the truth.
It's
What do you
addictive
think,
as well.
Caroline?
I think it's addictive. Well, I think it's interesting. I agree with you. I think it should be integrated. I also see some progressive law firms doing cool stuff. Like Freshfields has just started part of their training cohort. Their trainees are going to go off and do. They're just trialing it right now. They've just got the first cohort going off, and they're going to do a tech course as like a mini tech. MBA type thing as part of their training contract, which is a huge investment on Freshfield's part. I think you'll start to see that more as well. Like, so I think that the law, I think it should be part of tech. People should come out ready to practice with a good understanding of technology, because why wouldn't they? Because tech is going to be doing a whole swathe of the work that they would have done once. So, I think that otherwise they'll be out of kilter. I think they absolutely, and yeah, your point about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, your point about ChatGPT being addictive is just crazy. I know people who are using it for every part of their life. That's another conversation.
There's also like ethical implications of use of AI, right? Particularly for lawyers, like you're obligated to disclose. Now, like the ABA has come up with, I think, rules for use of AI that different states are adopting. So, putting parameters around that, whether you're in the legal industry or not, ethical use of AI, and understanding like how to reduce hallucinations if you're going to use this technology. And I think educating people will go a long ways towards first people not being scared to use it and using it to improve their lives, but also guards against the sort of misinformation that can end up landing people into trouble. Exactly.
I know, right?
So
Thanks to Mark. Yeah, Mark's posted the link to the trapped in a GPT spiral, which is the thing that you were talking about, right?
Yeah. Not to, because I am a millennial and on the progressive side, I will say they're trigger warning. Pretty dark content. So,
really? Okay.
yes. So don't, it's not to hide the point, but like there's some people that have like ended up committing suicide because they think that whatever conversation they're having is real, or they go into like paranoid delusions and stuff. So do I think people need more education around this? Yes. Just like when I was in second grade and they like bought us all MacBooks and we're like, this is a computer, learn how to type. Yeah, I'm all for that.
There's another question that's not to do with ChatGPT, because we will be here. We're going to come back onto the editing tool in a minute, guys, and also the MCP. But how could metadata support explainability in AI, helping solicitors understand why a system produced a particular answer? Thanks for that question.
Explainability in AI, helping solicitors understand why a system produced a particular answer. I guess, if I understand correctly, you're asking if there's a potential for metadata to sort of lead people through its reasoning process. Then yeah, because it's kind of giving you, hey, I extracted these key bits of data and I based my answer to you off this. If you have it set out in that view that I just showed everybody, you could quickly check and be like, oh, well, it totally got the termination date wrong, so it's flagging it for no reason. So yeah, I think that would go a long ways towards that. Also, if you saw when I was further querying my document using the assistant, the first thing it did, and we've prompted it to do so, is it provides that sort of reasoning up front, like, you asked me to look at this document. Here is where I looked. I am now going to summarize it for you. I think the more transparency there is, absolutely, it helps you better understand where the answers are coming from, and it's not such a black box, which is very important, especially in legal work.
I guess it sounds like so. I never know if I can say people's names, but thank you. So I know they say, I know our solicitors are wary of using AI. I think that's the more you can explain in terms of how it's doing what it's doing and how you make it more accurate, I guess that's helpful. Maybe anybody else can jump in on that. But it certainly can make it more reliable, right? More in depth in terms of the returns that it's giving you.
To give a good example, one time our marketing team was like, "Hey, can you find me this statistic?" And I used ChatGPT 3, oh, whatever the reasoning model was. And it was actually very helpful because it told me that this certain number. And then, but it said in the part where it gave me its sort of analysis, it was like, well, I don't have the exact number for that, but I have the number for a subgroup of that. So assuming that I take that number and multiply it by the proportion that that subgroup makes of the larger group I'm extrapolating from, the number should be this. And I immediately was like, no, that doesn't work. That's inaccurate because there was like you're conflating two different things, and that subgroup's actually not a subgroup of this larger group. I know I'm being super abstract right now, but even with that, it was very useful towards me being able to quickly tell our marketer that actually no, that number is not publicly available. And so, rather than just trusting the AI, I was able to still apply my human reasoning. And so far, my brain's still won out, but one day it'll probably be better than me. But yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question? Obviously, one of the real benefits of using your own data to augment a large language model is that you can, there's lots of benefits, but you can really start to, you talked earlier about what's market. So that's an example that people keep coming back to. So you've got a partner who currently they're in a meeting and they've got their own instinct and own knowledge about what's market. But actually, when you start to really use your own data, be able to really augment AI with your own data, then you're going to be able to potentially have it look at 800 deals, and you're going to be able to say, well, we actually really know what's market, and that's a competitive edge. To what extent would you say having taxonomy versus not having taxonomy? If I was to do it, if I was to not work on this, and I was just to use large language model, do you have to what extent, to what difference does it make in its ability, the percentage of its ability, or the accuracy, or is there something that shows how beneficial this is?
Yeah. What a great question, Caroline. You're right. You basically with NetDocs, you are augmenting the LLMs with your own proprietary data. I'm going to use that when I do demos from now because I've been thinking of like a good way to say that forever. Thanks, Caroline. People are like, well, are you still using the LLM and the internet? And I'm like, yes, but also it's a closed loop because it's referring to only your documents to come up with like the basis of the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just using the obviously the LLM to come up with the generative part of it, but the information and the data is coming from your documents. Anyways, the difference is, well, in order to do the metadata, you have to have all the documents sitting within our system, right? So at the end of this, soon we're going to have something called semantic search, where as soon as you drop a document into our system, it will be semantically indexed, which means it's will be processed, and so therefore, it makes then the auto profiling will follow. And the difference between that is like if you try to just plug and play with a third party vendor, to do the search on that end, then every single time it's going to have to ingest those documents. It's not really possible, right? Because it's not going to take all 10 million of your firm's precedents and be able to like index them properly and then search them, right? So the search we think still lives within the DMS. In terms of the difference, I think that's one, is that to search effectively, you're going to need all these files on the DMS semantically indexed with the metadata fully filled out in order to optimize it. But on that deal intelligence part, once you have all this metadata filled out, it's really easy to then, live the day of in real time, export that because it's in a data table on the back end to a CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet, and then be able to use that to generate like whatever pie chart you're looking for. Like 30% of like our deals in the last 5 years, we've agreed to these terms. Like, and you might be able to do that like with, again, though, if you just kind of try to plug and play without having all these files indexed and profiled, it's just going to be a larger lift and longer processing time. And you might not have accurate results the same way you would using this way. We're really building stuff like brick by brick so that it's done properly, right? I think with the other way where it might only look at a portion of your documents, you're never going to really get the full picture, and it is more of a black box. So, it might give you an answer, but is that answer accurate? How many files did you feed it? Did it actually extract that data properly? If it's also trying to do like a metadata hydration.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. So two questions. And then we will get to editing. so increasingly, increasingly Gen AI tools are being embedded directly into core legal platforms rather than separate add-ons. When AI becomes under the hood of these products, how should firms navigate situations where clients instruct them not to use AI? You kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but will there realistically be a way to disentangle AI capabilities from the everyday functionality of the software itself? I kind of argue that eventually we'll, like with cloud, probably get to the point where they won't instruct you not to use AI, but I know we're currently in this situation where that's still happening. It's a good question. What do you say?
Currently, yes, you can just apply, the same sort of security and permissions right now as when there's a conflict. You just say this is conflicted out. I don't want any of this AI stuff to touch this certain Matter workspace or this client. That's totally fine. But I think the long arc is towards technological innovation. It's kind of like at the beginning, if firms were like, no, we don't want you to use the cloud or like the internet on any of this work. I want lawyers manually redlining or something like that. I think eventually, just in terms of realizing efficiencies, people are going to move towards it. Like I know there's this one large institution that was like, there shall be no AI on our stuff. And then the last time I checked their website, they were advertising, they're like, we use AI in everything. Like,
yeah, it's like
we're
with the
passing all the
cloud.
profits to you because we use AI. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny period of change where eventually it's just like with cloud. I remember in the early days, everyone was like, "You can't use it," and then we're like, everyone's like, "But you use it." And they're like, "Yeah, it doesn't matter." I think, and then yeah, I think you're right. So Mark says maybe we can make use of AI, have a practical tech competency requirement. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ideas. We said no question. We said no question is can't be asked, and so there's a question, maybe a silly question. How does the collection of management information differ from the collection of metadata?
I'm not familiar with the term management information. Is
It's
that
MI,
practice management?
business data, right? Like I think it's quite different things. So like MI, if I'm understanding, so collection of management information, if I'm understanding, MI, so all of the business data, so across the firm, which is so whereas the metadata will be I mean, I might be misunderstanding, but that's my understanding of MI is more sort of the financial information, and whereas metadata will be the key sort of data points, like for example, when it was signed, where it was signed, what the terms are, key points of like duration, all these bits of information that the lawyers need to know in terms of particularly for triggering reviews and that sort of thing. But maybe yes, MI, yeah, so MI's financial data, and so it's somewhat different. But thank you. So just editing. So the editing tool that you've also released, so you can do sort of it's agentic. I know there's a lot of you talk about agentic tools, but it's agentic AI editing tool. Talk me through how it works. So once you've got your data in good shape, talk me through how the new editing tool works.
So as you saw, I opened an assistant when I narrowed down a document that I wanted to look at. Now imagine, so this is actually live in our development environment right now. I just didn't happen to show it today because I have to still get my credentials and everything, which I was supposed to do a while ago, but I've just been jammed up. Sorry, everybody. So, but I can verbally describe it to you and represent to you as an officer of the court that it's live and available. But it's what it sounds like. You can type instructions like change the governing jurisdiction from California to Delaware. The assistant will understand what you're doing and apply those changes to the document. You can do this from within Word. There are several vendors that do this right now. We're one of them. Or you can do it via the assistant to multiple documents. So just imagine this is really game changing. This is probably the stuff that everyday practicing attorneys really care about. Well, maybe just junior ones. I've had some senior attorneys being like, I don't edit my own documents anymore. And I'm like, well, I was still doing it as an eighth year. But say you have a closing set of 80 documents and you just need to, sometime. I remember this is one of those war stories. There was one client in Florida that it was a project financing deal, and they wanted physical folders of every document in a room. And up to the last minute, they were renegotiating terms, and signing kept on getting pushed. Signatories kept on changing. So every time this happened, I, as the peon, would have to go in my computer, hurriedly change it, print it out, run in the folder, and swap it out for the new one. So there were 80 of these folders of these documents that we were negotiating. So you could imagine how painful that was.
Yeah.
Hopefully no one does physical closings anymore. It might be a thing of the past. But imagine you could, within the assistant, say, hey, change the signatory and the signing date of all 80 of these agreements to this. You could do that using the editing tool. And not only that, you can also use the editing tool to apply playbooks. Like if you have certain prompts that you're going to ask people to use again and again, for example, to optimize a brief according to a certain style of writing, you'll be able to do that via the editing tool. Just click a button and it'll apply that and make those changes for you. So very useful when you have like global comments. You can even do something, you can get creative and be like, make this more buy-side friendly. And the idea is that it'll make those changes, you'll see them, you'll approve of them, and then you can decide to accept or reject them on an individual basis or on a batch basis, and it'll apply them either in track changes or not in the document live. So it just allows you to do your work a lot more faster and at scale.
Yeah. Would that be so you would you use that? So you obviously the example you gave is a live deal that you're working on. It's with the current sort of documents. Could you use it for like repapering exercises? So like it's not necessarily a deal, but where there's some bit of new legislation and you need to create new documents but you need to kind of change. Would it be, is that a use case that you could envisage or not so much? Am I being unclear?
Sorry, Caroline, give me one second.
I
need to plug in my computer. Give me 1 second. It's dying.
I also sing, so right now I'm just about to do a little if anyone has any questions on the editing capability, just let me know, because some of the other examples of edits might be, so we've talked about updating pricing and payment terms across templates. You can use it to standardize jurisdictional language across NDAs. That's another quite cool use case that I think some people are looking at. I'm now doing Jen's bit, just FYI, on the recording. Jen, I'm literally doing your stuff.
Sorry, you were answering that question about management information as well. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I was just running through some of the different use cases that you could use for editing. I was like, updating pricing and payment terms across templates, standardized jurisdictional language across NDAs, rewrite risk language for client communication, edit settlement terms or discovery responses. But the thing I was asking about, like, could you use it for repapering? Like these exercises that sometimes you have clients that I mean, maybe I don't know why you necessarily need to do this, because in the context of a live deal, this would be quite cool if you could just do global changes across your document set. But when I looked at this, I was just thinking about those huge exercises that you sometimes have to do where there's a change in legislation, and to date,
LIBOR.
You've used
LIBOR, for example. Yeah.
LIBOR, my God. Yeah. And you've had to use dedicated ALSPs or what have you. There's no way you could do this internally. I just wondered, could you use something like this? I mean, maybe it's just too big of an exercise, but
no.
I mean, it's a lot of money for a firm. If they could keep that in-house by using AI, that would be pretty lucrative, because these things.
A great use case. Yeah, no, Caroline, you're absolutely right. And I think you could use AI in multiple ways. First of all, you could use AI search to actually identify the documents in your DMS that need repapering, which is a task in itself. And then, use the editing tool to apply changes at scale. And I think it's actually better than human reviewers, because human reviewers might miss something. They often have to Control F to find where those changes need to be made. But this way you could just do it en masse, all at once. So
it's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, it happens semi-regularly that you get this change in legislation. I don't know whether law firms would want to do it necessarily, but it's a huge exercise, which, to date, there's been, it's typically ALSPs, because they've had actually stereotypically, they've also had better tech for this kind of thing. But so I don't know, it's just interesting, isn't it? It's whether this could then sort of just be something that you just do and it's not that big a deal.
That's a sexier use case than what I was about to say. I was like, when the first time that they were like, this editing tool is available now, and I was like, can it do this? Can it make sure that it's single spaced or double spaced after every period? Because if you could imagine, when I was practicing, my first firm believed in single spacing and my second firm believed in double spacing. And so like at the first firm, when I was going through like 200-page contracts, like one of my jobs as a first year was to make sure that everything was like single
Oh
spaced. And
gosh.
to this day, if you give me something, I can spot where there's like an anomaly. Like if something is double spaced when everything else is single spaced, I'll be like, oh, delete.
Seriously. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but
anyone who's not a lawyer would just be like, what the actual?
just what is
But
she talking
no,
about?
no, no. Like, as in, I'm an ex-lawyer. Like, I mean, oh, goodness me, like it's just a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Team single space in the chat.
I was also thinking though, like sometimes, and this is more in litigation when we're going through a brief and like a change in wording, right? So rather than saying, this is a dumb example, rather than saying material adverse effect, we're going to say material adverse change because we want to highlight that part. Then go through the document and every single time it's mentioned, change it to change, right? Like you could
Yeah,
do control H and replace, but sometimes that's not accurate because it might like pick up the word effective or all that stuff, and change that instead.
yeah,
With AI, it can actually does that pretty cleanly,
yeah, yeah.
which I think is pretty cool. So yeah,
Without needing the keyword, obviously that's the amazing thing. Is I mean, it can just
yeah.
with your assistant, then you could just go through and not give it instructions in natural language, and give it a task, and then it will just I mean, it's quite a different exercise.
You gave such a sophisticated use case, and I'm doing like the caveman stuff. I'm like the
No,
super basic things. Single spacing, double spacing, changing one word, all that. Or like, oh, good
to be
example was
completely
changing the gender from like he to she. Because if you try to do
yeah,
that via Control H, it'll pick up all the instances of he or she. Not
yeah.
practical, right? Um,
But also, I think people like you were saying originally, um, in terms of how you're batching the changes with profiling. I think and coming up with simple use cases to start with. I think probably you're not going to boil the ocean straight away, right? You have to start practically getting people used to using it, and you're realistically not just going to start by doing this great repapering exercise. It's going to be a case of little by little just getting used to becoming more familiar and getting to trust it and all of these kinds of things before you start using it with these like gigantic exercises.
that's how I know you're an ex-lawyer because you said the phrase boil the ocean. I literally have never heard anybody else use that phrase other than lawyers. And I don't remember if you were in litigation or transactional, but it literally meant like go to the ends of the earth, chase down every single legal case you can find, even if it's from like 1662, boil the ocean on it, or don't boil the ocean on it. Like that's like the origin of the term, but that's definitely like a lawyer thing to say. And then
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's funny. My friends in finance, there's like they always say, let's noodle on it. And I'm like, noodle? Who what they mean like let's think on it? That's like a
Yeah.
very every occupation I think has its own specific terms that you only hear there. It's funny. Anyway, sorry.
There's
Tangents.
another thing for AI to get like would it be picking up be like in legal it'll be picking up by the ocean in finance we'll be looking at noodling, like is all this different terminology that we're going to be thinking about or not thinking about. I think so that's fascinating. So hey, listen, we've got like 4 minutes to talk about MCP. So MCP, so model context protocols that introduced by Anthropic last year. I'm sure Jen will do a far better job of talking about it, explaining it. But it's been so it's an open standard that enables AI systems to connect with your data, and everyone's kind of excited about it, talking about it. A lot of people, the use of the word game changing. But so are you excited? I know you've also got a couple of just concerns, maybe.
I'm actually just excited that we only have 5 minutes to talk about it because I'm not the MCP expert. I know probably as much as like I do understand it stands for Model Context Protocol, and like when someone explained it to me, I was like, oh, it's a fancy API. It's like a free
It's
for all.
an
It's like a
API
dongle.
for AI. It's an API
Yeah.
for AI. Yeah,
It's an
that
API, it's an AI dongle basically that
yeah,
allows you to, plug and play with like
yeah.
no matter who it is. So at NetDocs, we've taken the approach where we have like a program called ND Connect, where it allows you to like upload and download documents from NetDocs into right now our two partners are Harvey and Legora. But we're also going to have MCP available down the line for tighter and deeper integrations. However, those take some time because, again, we're a security and compliance company. So making sure that we know, like, once that is available for you to freely use our search to service documents and then port them over, that security or whatever is going to be maintained. So again, part of the training, security is paramount. So MCP, yes, great. But figuring out the details of that and how tight those integrations go, I think is going to be, it's going to take some time, and it's not as immediate and straightforward as people think it is. Oh, we have 2 minutes left. Yay. I said my piece.
I think, you know, like clients are expecting it, right? Like it's one of these fast moving things, and you know, we won't talk about, we can change subject, but you know, I think it's something, it's moving fast, just like everything in this area. It's moving super quick, you know, and I know clients are super excited about it.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention the word agent. The MCP allows different agents to use it, and so it really allows for interoperability at scale. I call it fancy API multi-dongle or whatever it is. Yeah.
And then I suppose just 2 minutes, like it leads into this. It's quite funny that I'm giving 2 minutes for platformization, but like it also ties into this sort of, you know, I think for the end user it can be quite tiring because you know, there's this battle over who's going to have the platform, where it's going to live. I think at the moment there's a bit of overwhelm. You know, everyone wants to be the platform. Everyone's saying, like, we are the platform that you're going to connect with. You know, this is where you're going to live. And I think you know, it's interesting to see how this is all shaping out as well.
We still think we'll be it. I mean, it's taken us 3 years to sort of like figure out how we're going to do semantic indexing and this AI search thing reliably, accurately. And like, it also uses a lot of computing power. So you need a lot of cloud power to do that. So that's why we migrated to AWS, because it's offered us the best terms and has that sort of thing available. So, you know, I am from NetDocs and I'm not a shill, but I'm like, you guys try doing it. We still think that you're going to need, we're focused on interoperability and allowing our customers to use the technology they want. As I said, not one size is going to fit all, not one ring to rule them all. You're probably going to have like multiple things that you want to use for different use cases. We recognize that, and that's why we're working hard on the MCP and the partnerships.
Yeah, which actually ties in nicely. Yeah, that interoperability is going to be absolutely key. We've kind of come to the hour. I just, before we cut off, I just want to make sure I take time to say thank you. Sometimes I think I get to the end of webinars and then I'm just like, thank you so much. But I really enjoy our conversations, and I know that someone's already said thank you in the chat. It's always so great. Someone said thank you for a fabulous tutorial, and I know we cover a huge amount of ground, and I always really enjoy chatting to you. It's always a bit of fun as well as an education. So.
Same, Caroline. I'm not like, oh, another LITI webinar, please. No, I look forward to them as well. Thank you so much for everyone's time, and thanks to you, Caroline, for being such a good host as usual.
And thank you everyone for listening, and it's so great to see you as always. Thank you.